Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Finding Me in the ITV Networks with this episode 2, or shall I say part 2, with Professor Extraordinarius from the University of South Africa, Professor Ramose. Ramose. In the first part, we touched extensively on the idea of Ubuntu African philosophy and understanding Ubuntu through an understanding of African philosophy. And of course, the essence I think that came out from there was the ability to identify our own humanness and to understand that the world consists of human beings. We are all human beings. And in that, we took the discussion a little further, where I asked Professor Ramose, because of this ability or this tendency to keep negating the other through a concept of identifying the other, especially if the individual is a person of color. If you're not white, then somehow you're less, you're inferior. And in many instances, philosophies or institutionalized ideologies like apartheid, Zionism, etc., perpetuate this notion of the other or the lesser human being. And Professor then gave us an understanding and an appreciation of how you see Israel in terms of world politics. But Professor, as I explained to you, and welcome back, as I explained to you in the previous discussion, just as we closed, in many ways, however, you touch on the concept of the conflict in terms of religious conflict. Do you believe that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is a religious conflict, or is it a conflict on the basically domination of resources, belittling of the other? Of course, dehumanize the other so that you can control and maintain your conquest, very much as what has happened in Africa through colonialism.
There is a link, because there's always a link between religion and politics. So to fragment and say, oh, it is either religious or political will be problematical, especially for someone like me who thinks in terms of ness. That's why I would say Ubuntu really speaks to us in terms of humanness. Mm-hmm. You may notice even in my book, the term being is written in two ways, in normal English as being, and also as being as an hyphenated term.
Okay.
And it is exactly to capture this ness around us. Mm-hmm. Now, precisely because this ness means a complex interaction of forces all the time, I'm a bit wary of saying it is only religious. No, the religious dimension has got a spillover into the politics. In a way that you rightly point out, people might think, because of my God, like they thought, because of their God of Jesus, we have no right to any other God, and therefore their God will make sure that they control not only us, they control our land, the resources, and everything. So you can see the similarities there. When politics spills over from religion, you see, yes, there is an interconnection. So it is not the one or the other. It is how they are mutually constitutive and how they support each other.
Now, based on that particular concept, I think the whole idea of humanness means, therefore, that we are all equal, that we are all entitled to the same freedoms, the same statuses, the same resources, or access to the same resources, that we are one humankind. And there is a big debate in South Africa, there's a big dialogue in South Africa at the moment, that we are now entering 20 years of democracy. So do you believe that we've entered 20 years of democracy and that this democracy has brought freedom and equality for the people of South Africa?
Well, in the first place, one must recognize that if we look at the history, it is very funny to carry the flag of democracy and say we have entered 20 years of democracy as though South Africa has never been democratic before. Actually, if we have to be more precise, we have to talk in terms of the final extension of democracy to the population group which was all the time excluded, constitutionally speaking. The other population groups, like the Indian, by the way, the Indians arrived in South Africa in 1860, and the other group, which we are supposed to call colored, and I contest the meaning of colored exactly on the ground of what I have said last time.
Right.
Yes, we are humans. When Van Riebeeck and his crew, I see in the Cape that he came with a woman from wherever he came from. Not every member of the crew came with a woman. And so what happened? They didn't leave our grannies and our sisters alone. And therefore, a colored is really not a colored. Thinking in colored terms is just a political way to manipulate the logic of exclusion of the other, and to pretend that the other is not a human being.
Or less.
So,
yes.
yes. So you see, there were democracies. Now, in 1983, South Africa was still a democracy, but it included what they call colored. Then it included the Indian, it included whites. Incidentally, if we speak very correctly about color, of course, whites are not white, they are more pink than white. You see, yeah. So if they are more pink than white, let's face it. So why do we call them white? You see, even our illusions about color are not so very serious. Now, the extension of democracy to what are called black people is still a problem, because I'm not so black as you can see. So anyway, color thinking is just to say problematic.
It's problematic, yes.
Right. Yes. Now, when you extend democracy to the remaining population group, we have to take into account exactly what happened and under what circumstances this happened. One of the things is that for a long time, this logic of exclusion and claim to power has been supposed to be the monopoly of the white group. The question we have to ask now is, have they actually abandoned that monopoly? Well, I can tell you no, because what they have done is, even to talk in terms of legal paradigm, they decided, when it comes to the point where we have to include black people in the democracy, then we must make sure we rein them in somehow. And one way of reining them in is to ensure that we move away in terms of philosophical paradigm, legal philosophical paradigm. We move away from parliamentary supremacy to constitutional supremacy, because the Constitution will make them prisoners of their wishes. They cannot have all their wishes. Why did they think so? Because the previous constitutional dispensation of parliamentary supremacy, they claim, those who defend this shift of paradigm, claim that, you see, in the past, you had this parliamentary supremacy, and they refer to the Harris cases. And they show that, you see, actually, because Parliament had all the power, they could actually even insist that the courts have only the power to speak on form and not substance. Now, we want to change. The courts must be able to speak on substance and not only on form. Well, this argument is not convincing, because the academics already, for example, in the University of Cape Town, if you follow the Acta Juridica Journal, you will see academics like Davenport already argued for constitutional supremacy. But you see, he was a voice in the wilderness. If it made sense at that time, why was it not implemented?
Exactly.
You see, so if this really makes sense, It should have been implemented there. But opportunistically, because it was also the time to make the whites rich, the poor Afrikaner had to be part of the dispensation from Hohenheimer to Oppenheimer, then, of course, they ignored that. Now, when the black people are included, now they remember, they resurrect people like Davenport, say, but we think he was right. You see?
Okay, but what is wrong with the Constitution?
Pardon?
What is wrong with the Constitution? What does it do that keeps you impoverished or keeps the black people?
It actually, in very short statement, the Constitution is the continuation of the same old impoverishment of unjustly acquired privileges. Now, these unjustly acquired privileges are transmuted into rights, which are now to be defended by legal means. And so, the condition of poverty of black people is assured even better, because now, if you make laws that want to improve on this one, they must be tested in substance as to whether or not they are valid. So you remain stuck. You remain stuck. You see, you can't tell us about the Harris cases and say, you see, abuse of law means that the Bible was abused to make apartheid work. But the same Bible was used to make apartheid not work. So you can't tell us, no, do away with parliamentary supremacy. It is still a constitutional principle in the United Kingdom. It is still there. And the United Kingdom has got separate legislation on the Bill of Rights. So why did we have to depart from that? To feed who?
No, for me, it's a very simple answer. We have to go to a break, but you can confirm or deny my answer. And that is because of the understanding that black people don't know how to rule and that they're all dictators. So if you put them in parliament, they're going to abuse. That is the answer. So that's why we need a constitutional supremacy to contain the black person. But we'll see you after the break.
Thank you.